very much. Thank you very much for being here on time. Really appreciate you spending the time to have a look at Sourced and have a look at some of the stuff that we can teach you to do, and some of the things that are available to you in property, because a lot of the stuff that we talk about, the majority of people that are out there, I would say, have no idea how to make the most out of property, and especially when it comes to something like cash flow, right? Because you see these big developments, you see these, commercial conversions, new build homes. They're the big, glamorous deals that people do in property. And the thing that, they make a huge amount of money. There's usually a lot of margin in those deals. But what they don't do is they don't produce cash flow, right? Because to get from beginning to end in a big deal like that, it's going to take you, 18 months, 2 years, especially on the new build stuff. If you're building a few properties, a couple of years is a fairly reasonable amount of time to be spending on something like that. So what do you do for those 2 years? What do you do until you have access to that big pot of money right at the end? And that's something that we look at. That's a problem that we try and solve for our franchisees. And we've solved it in a number of ways. Some ways that are available on the market, and some ways that are exclusive and only available to Sourced. So let's go through some of this stuff today. So first of all, I'm going to apologise because my internet is quite slow. I've come downstairs to somewhere that's quite quiet in our HQ, and for some reason the internet down here is a little bit slow this afternoon. So I apologise for that. But as we're going through, I will stop at the end for any questions. We'll do a question and answer session at the end. Meanwhile, before that, you have a couple of options. You should have a chat box that you can write into. So if you write in your chat box a question, then I will either address it during the presentation or at the end of the presentation, whatever I think is the best fit. But I will be monitoring it throughout. So first of all, a little introduction and a little bit about me. Why am I the right person to talk to you about cash flow, and why am I, making it even bigger than that? Why am I the right person to talk to you about property stuff? So here is a very well photoshopped picture of me. I assure you, in real life, I don't look quite that polished. However, my name is Chris Kirkwood. I am actually the franchise director now, so I look after the entire franchise. I used to be the development director, so I was working with the franchisees to make sure that they were achieving their goals, or they were working towards their goals. And now I'm the franchise director, so I've got one step up from that, and now I take care of the entire franchise. So not only do I assess deals that franchisees put forward to us, but I work with the franchisees on a closer basis, and I also build the franchise as a business. So one of the things that I'm doing at the moment is I'm employing a few support people in order to provide much more focused support for our franchisees. So that's me. I've founded and run and grown multiple businesses over the last 25 years or so. Started out not being in property, and then the businesses that I was growing started to generate a good amount of profit. And I looked for somewhere to put that profit. So I went into property, and I started putting my money into property on the side of running and growing these businesses. And after a period of time, I quickly got to see that the money that I was putting into property was actually performing a lot better than the other businesses that I was running. So I jumped out of those businesses, I sold them, put even more money into my bank account, and then I came across the property, and I invested that money into property. So I've been involved in property for 10 years or so, and I've invested I've bought properties from £55,000 and been involved in deals up to £150 million. So I've had a really good range of deals, and that's only the stuff that I've bought. I've been involved in a lot of the strategies that we're going to talk about today. Probably the most common one that we're going to talk about, and I'm sure this is going to come at no surprise to you, is rent to rent. I was involved in rent to rent as a way of helping me build a monthly cash flow in order to step away from the day job, the businesses that I built, in order to get into property in a more full-time capacity. So lots of different things that I've done in property, lots of different strategies that I've been involved with, and lots of different people that I've worked with that are executing strategies that I personally haven't done myself, but I have helped people work their way through the strategies. Because one of the things that I talk about a lot, every single training course that I do, I talk about this every time. Property is just a combination of knowing what finance is available to you and knowing what contracts are available to you. If you know what finance is available to you and you know what contracts you have at your disposal, you can come up with a solution to find for any kind of property problem. So I've helped a lot of other people do that. And now I assess, like I say, I'm the franchise director for Sourced. And at the moment, I probably look at about 100 deals a week, 100 property deals a week. And of those property deals that I'm looking at, I'm not only just, looking at the numbers and seeing what the profit number is at the end of the spreadsheet, but I'm looking at the structure of those deals. I'm looking at how that deal is put together and whether there are any possible alternatives for how we could structure that deal. You know what? I've just looked at a deal half an hour ago today from our franchisee, Cassia, in London. And she put a deal across to me, which was for £1.4 million. And she was going to make £48,000 worth of profit out of that deal. I've restructured that deal to mean that she now would make around £220,000 profit from that deal. So just by looking at the way that the deal is structured, understanding what finance is available to me, understanding what contracts are available to me, I've rejigged the deal, and now I've taken her profit level from £48,000 up to about £220,000. So that's an example of how knowing the right way to look at a deal and knowing what's available to you can make a huge difference in the amount of zeros that you have in your bank account at the end of the year. And like I say, as you can see, I've been doing this for some time now. And now, as one of the directors of Sourced, we have a number of different things going on at Sourced. If you go to our website, I'm sure you've seen it. We've got 5 main areas in our website. Really, Sourced is focused on 2 of those areas. We put most of our time and effort into 2 of those areas. The first area is franchise, and the second area is capital. So on franchise, we help people like Cassia, like the person that I've just been talking about. We help people make their own way in the property world, to build their own property business. And then the second focus for Sourced is capital, where we've started a peer-to-peer, FCA regulated peer-to-peer platform, and we raise money to fund our franchisees' deals. So we build a franchise, we teach people how to do it, and then we fund those deals for them. So very straightforward business model. Although looking at our website and looking at the 5 sections, it doesn't look very straightforward as you look at it today. I'm just going to quickly jump up to the top and just look at the chat box, because I've seen a couple. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to carry on, and that's a question that I'm going to answer at the end. So yeah, Sourced focuses on franchise, and it focuses on capital, which is our peer-to-peer lending platform. So let's have a look at a couple of successes so far with Sourced. Where did we start? How have we moved on? So in January 2017, a pilot scheme was launched. And then in September 2017, the franchise was launched. So between January and September, there was a lot of R&D going on to find out, where exactly Sourced would sit in the marketplace, what exactly the offering would be, so on and so forth. So as you can see, September 2017 was when the franchise was launched. We've just celebrated our 3rd birthday, which was just last weekend, actually, that we celebrated our 3rd birthday, which is, it doesn't sound like a long time, 3 years, but man, if we could have a look back now, we could have a highlight reel of all of the different deals and all of the different structures and all of the different hurdles that we've overcome in that time. There's been a huge amount of stuff. So coming on to August in 2018, we received FCA approval for our peer-to-peer lending platform. And in October 2018, we hit 40 franchisees. So fairly quickly, we got to 40 franchisees because there was a demand there. The demand that was there, I think, really comes back to the amount of support and the amount of the ongoing relationship that we build with our franchisees. Because if you go to a training course, you go to that course and then you go home after that training course and you're there sitting at your kitchen table, staring at your laptop, you don't really know what to do. Whereas because we're a franchise, we have that ongoing relationship with all of our franchisees. If they have a problem, we set up support days where they can come and they can ask us any question. We can focus on their business. We can talk about whatever they want to talk about. We're also at the end of the phone as well. So when the training course is finished, that's when the hard work begins, and we're there to support them. So, we have multiple ways which the franchisees can get in touch with us, both face-to-face and digitally. But if they've got any questions, if they need any help, then we are there, right there with them, helping them build their business, and we're there on their journey. So in February 2019, we launched our £150 million development, which is Regent Plaza in Manchester. So we're building 525 flats in Manchester right now. So if you go down Regent Road in Manchester, you'll see our hoardings up with the big Source logos and everything on the side of that. That's a couple of years away from completion at the moment, but those flats are being built right now. We've got a specific team that deal with Regent Plaza. Because obviously building 525 flats is quite an undertaking. So we don't want to detract from our franchise. So we have a specific team that take care of those developments. March 2019, we were approved for ISA and pension funding. So if you want to invest into property, you can now do so through your ISA or through your SAS or SIP pension. In September 2019, we launched Sourced Care, which we're not going to talk about a huge amount at the moment. That's currently being in the research and development phase. So it's not ready for our franchisees just yet. There is a huge opportunity in care, which we want to make sure we have the right contacts, we have the right structure, we have the right planning in place before we launch that with our franchisees. And in November 2019, we hit 60 franchisees. Source Capital raised £1 million or more than £1 million a month for the first time in January 2020. And that's become fairly commonplace now. And even with the challenges of coronavirus, the first time that we raised over £1 million in a month was in January this year. And raising over £1 million a month has now become fairly commonplace for our capital team. So we're raising that £1 million or more every single month to fund our franchisees' deals. So this money is being raised specifically and exclusively for our franchisees. And in July this year, we hit 100 franchisees. So in 3 short years, we've gone from 0 franchisees to over 100 franchisees, which is where we currently sit. And just to give that some kind of context, there are very few other property franchises that have gone to 100 franchisees or more. You think of that, like the big estate agents. It's taken them a lot longer to get to 100 franchisees, and they sort of stagnate around that point because what we offer and the stuff is very desirable. And it's the property industry, right? Everybody knows that you can make a huge amount of money out of the property industry. So this specific webinar is all about how to build a post-pandemic cash flow from property. So let's have a look at exactly what that means. So when you look at property in general, you're probably going to look at a couple of options. You probably know about, creating a cash flow from buy-to-let, which is the most straightforward way to make a cash flow, isn't it? So you put your money into property and it will create a cash flow for you. Now, if you're a little bit more sophisticated, you might have heard about HMOs. So instead of having a buy-to-let property that is going to give you, just the income from one family, you might split that property up into 5 different rooms and rent out each one of the rooms individually, and you'll create more of a cash flow. So if you're a little bit more sophisticated, you might know about HMOs. Now, the issue with that is you need quite a lot of money up front in most cases in order to buy that property to create the cash flow. So if you're going to buy a house, you need a deposit at least, and then all the purchasing costs in order to buy that house to create the cash flow. So what you can do, moving on for one additional level of sophistication, is you can look at rent to rent. So rent to rent is when you rent a house off somebody and then you go through that process of creating a cash flow from it. So you could rent a house from somebody, you could divide the rooms, and you could rent out each room individually. And if you're going to make a margin, you would pocket the margin. So obviously from that strategy, you wouldn't need to buy the house in the first place. So that means that you need less money in your pocket in order to get that strategy done. So what do most people do when they come into the property industry? And you know what? I'm going to hold my hands up here and I'm going to say this is exactly what I did. I bought a house. I didn't do my research. What I knew about property was that you can make a lot of money from property. Now, the first thing that I looked at was yield. I look back at that decision now and I just think, I wish I had the knowledge that I have now back then, because that's probably one of the last things that I would have looked at. But the first thing I did, I had a lot of money in my pocket and I wanted to go and buy a property, and I just looked at how much return that would be as a single let. And I bought a house for £67,500. And that was it was £67,000. And that was on Kingsford Street in Salford. So, one of the things that if you've been on a webinar before, I'm sure you'll know, we're very transparent. We're very open about the stuff that we've done. If you haven't been on a webinar before, get used to this kind of openness. So, and like I say, if you've got any questions, then don't be afraid to ask me any questions whatsoever at the end. So £67,000, and I put one family in it, and I made that cash flow. And the cash flow from that was probably about 100 quid a month. So the return was crap, right? The return really wasn't fantastic. Then I started to learn a little bit more about property, but because I thought, this isn't working. I'm putting this money into property. I am a property investor and it's not working. What am I doing wrong? So I started to learn. I started to increase my education. And at that point, I started to really learn about the different ways that you can create a cash flow from property. So, what's right for you? Well, when I first started to look at the different ways that I could create a cash flow for property, I found 4 main ways that you can make cash flow very, very quickly. And the whole point of these are that it doesn't take a huge amount of money for you to create that cash flow, because you don't want to tie your money up. If you look at the way that you should be growing your property business, you should be creating a cash flow as cheaply as you possibly can to take care of your every month expenses. And then when your monthly expenses are taken care of, you want to then start getting into bigger deals. The deals that make you 40, 50, 60, 70, £100,000 for every deal that you do. Because at that point, you can get into those bigger deals because you know that your cash flow is taken care of. Now, I would much rather spend as little money as possible on my cash flow in order to have as much money as possible to get into those bigger deals. Because if you want to go for those bigger deals, you are going to need money. If you need to go through planning, you're going to need money. If you're going to look at a title split, you are going to need money. So I'd much rather keep my money in my pocket, take care of my cash flow as cheaply as possible, and then use that money to get into those bigger deals. Because, let's be honest, the cash flow stuff is nice and it takes care of you, but it's not going to make you rich. You want to get rich by looking at the bigger deals. So the deals, the ways of generating a cash flow are here. Here are the 5 ways that you can generate a cash flow. You've got sourced capital, which I'll go through in a minute. Now, I didn't originally discover sourced capital and the ways that the sourced capital can help, but the other 4 I did. Introducing new franchisees should actually be another category, which I'll get into in a second. But there we've got rent to rent, we've got deal sourcing and trading, and we've got lease options. So let's first of all look at source capital, because source capital is something that's available to our franchisees. So it's a peer-to-peer funding platform, like I've said. It's exclusive to franchisees, so they can borrow from it. The lending is based on 70% of the GDV. And now this is the interesting bit for our franchisees. If they introduce an investor to source capital, they will make a 5% commission. So if they introduce somebody that puts £100,000 into source capital, they can earn £5,000 of that £100,000. And this is good for cash flow because that money will be paid when the money is invested. So if an investor puts that money into source capital and the next day it's put into a project because the investor agrees to put it into a project, on that day is when the franchisee makes their £5,000. So we've had a couple of franchisees that have joined us who have not only paid back their original joining fee, but they've then gone on to make a profit over and above their original joining fee, just purely by introducing people to source capital. The highest amount of money that we've had a franchisee earn in 1 month has been £8,000, which I think you'll agree is a decent amount of money. So the amount of time it takes you to make money by introducing people to source capital is 1 day. From 1 day is what is, to be more specific, because if that investor takes 3 or 4 days in order to choose a project, it's going to take 3 or 4 days for you to get your money. Now, that's something that's purely available to source franchisees, and that's something that I did not discover when I first looked at property. Now, off-plan is something that I looked into when I was first coming into property. Now, what's the cash flow generating aspect of off-plan? Because off-plan, I'm sure you're aware, you see a development going on and you can see exactly like our Regent Plaza development in Manchester. You can see the boards up, you can see activity behind there, but there aren't any flats there yet. There aren't any houses built yet, but you could still buy, or you could still, an investor could still buy those flats. an investor could still buy those houses before they're made, and that's purchasing off plan. Now, if you create yourself as an off-plan sales agent, if you go to that developer and say, I would like to sell your flats, would you be able to give them to me because I have a number of people that I think are going to be interested? That master agent will say to you, yes, you can sell these flats. I'm going to give you these 5 flats and you have exclusivity over those 5 flats for a period of a month. And if you sell them, I'll give you 4% of their sales cost. So whatever you sell them for, you'll earn 4%, which sounds like a pretty good deal, doesn't it? Now, the interesting thing about off-plan is that the master agent gets given a commission, and now what they let you have as your commission is a share of their commission. So in most cases, the master agent will make about 8%. So they'll give you 4%, but they'll keep 4% for themselves for every property, for every one of those units that you sell. So in most cases, they'll share 50% of the commission with the sales team, and you will be one of the sales team. Now, interestingly, with sourced franchisees, for selling Regent Plaza, we allow our franchisees to make the full 8% commission. So we give them the master agent commission. So if any one of our franchisees wants to sell one of the Regent Plaza flats, they can do so, and they'll make the full 8%, which is, obviously double to what most agents are going to make. So the process behind this is where the magic is in terms of cash flow. So if you go out to, you could create some adverts, you could create some Facebook adverts, Rightmove adverts, LinkedIn adverts. You could go out to people in your network. You could talk to whoever you want to about buying these flats. When you find somebody that's interested, they have to pay a reservation fee, which is a couple of grand in most cases. Now, when they pay that reservation fee, they then have 28 days to exchange contracts. And on exchange of contracts, they need to leave a deposit of usually between 20 and 30%. Now, when they exchange contracts and leave their deposit of between 20 and 30%, that's when you make your commission. So if you sell one of these flats, and this is the same structure in 95% of new build sales, off-plan sales, sorry. When you sell, when they exchange contracts, that's when you make your money. You don't have to wait until completion. So you don't have to wait until those flats are all built or those houses are all built. You can make your money straight away on exchange of contracts. So you'll make your 8% on exchange of contracts. Now, our flats have been selling for about £250,000. So that's around £20,000 worth of commission for every one of those flats that's sold. And that £20,000 will be paid within about 28 days when that investor gets to exchange. So that's where the interesting part of selling off plan comes in for creating a cash flow. Because if you think how frequently you need to sell a flat worth £20,000 to contribute to your annual financial need, you probably only need to sell one a quarter. And if you sell one a quarter, you've then got somewhere in the region of £80,000 worth of income. So that's what's really interesting about off-plan sales. And don't forget that, all right, we might pay £20,000 in terms of commissions, but that is double the rate that most people would get when they're looking at selling off-plan. So on average, the commissions that we've got for Regent Plaza are about £16,000. So again, you look at £16,000, you times it by 4. If you sell one per quarter, you've got £64,000, which is a decent amount of money for an annual income. So now let's have a look at rent to rent. Now, like I said, rent to rent is the process by which you would rent a house or rent a property off somebody, and you would find a way of making that property cash flow higher than it currently was. You would pay your rent and you would pocket the difference in margin that you've created. So the two most common ways of creating that higher cash flow are HMO and serviced accommodation. So with HMO, like I've said, you split that property into different rooms, you rent out the rooms individually, and then you pocket the cash flow. With SA, with serviced accommodation, you would create that house as a holiday let, or let for specifically for competing with hotels for contractors, and you would rent that out to either a business or to individuals. Now, the room rate per night is obviously quite high in comparison to the room rate or the rate that you would pay as a standard monthly rent. So long as your occupancy is fairly high, you can create a huge amount of income from serviced accommodation, and that can pay your bills and put money in your pocket at the same time. Now, the time to make money on this is about a month, I would say. I've actually started making money from rent-to-rent HMO in less than a month, but I think being a bit more conservative and doing this from scratch, I think you should look to make money from 1 month. And then positive returns from 5 months. So what do I mean by that? With rent-to-rent HMO or serviced accommodation, in most cases, you are going to need money in your pocket to start off with, but nowhere near as much money as you would need if you were going to buy a property and then use that property for cash flow. So the rent-to-rent, I actually did a 5-bedroom rent-to-rent house where it was a single let house. I turned it into a HMO, 5 bedrooms, and it cost me about £5 grand. £5,000 to turn that from a single let property into a HMO. And I made £1,000 per month cash flow from that property, which means that from month 5, all the money that I was generating was then a profit. And that property was signed up on a 3-year deal. So from month 5, I was making profit, and I was going to make profit for the next 31 months of owning that property. Now you can see from rent to rent that if you're creating £1,000 cash flow per month, if you start to stack these properties up and you've got 4, 5, 6 of these properties, all of a sudden you're making a really good income. And I went from having no rent to rent properties to 6 rent to rent properties in the space of 12 months. And each one of them was cash flowing over £1,000. And therefore I had created a supplementary income of £72,000 just from doing a few rent to rent things. And on the side of that, I was also, when I first started the rent to rent stuff, I still had my businesses running and I was still buying other property at the same time. So you can go from you can go from zero to creating a really good income very, very quickly with rent to rent. Deal sourcing and trading is the next cash flow strategy. So what happens with deal sourcing and trading? You find a deal, you work out what the deal is, and then you introduce that deal to investors, or you introduce investors to that deal. And one of those investors says that they are interested in that kind of deal and they look to buy it. Now, when they buy it, they need to pay you a sourcing fee, and you would put that sourcing fee you would keep. And if you continue through that process and you scale that up, you can soon make that sourcing fee very significant. So to reduce your money into a deal, so what would normally happen is if you find a deal that's got 30% margin, there are ways that you can add that to your portfolio without using very much of your own money. However, investors in general look for a 15% margin or more. So that between 15% and 30% is the sweet spot where it's not so interesting for you because you're looking for the really good stuff. But for an investor, if you can find something between 15 and 30%, it's still very interesting for them, because in most cases, the investor isn't going to know the different ways that you can put finance and contracts together in order to buy property. So if you find a deal that's between 15 and 30% margin, and you find the property and it's worth, let's say, £100,000, you would charge 2% of the purchase price with a £2,000 minimum. So if it's worth £100,000 and you charge 2% of the purchase price, you're going to make £2,000 on selling that property. Now it gets very interesting when you're looking at bigger properties, because obviously a £500,000 purchase price will make you a £10,000 sourcing fee for that property. But the important thing is you've got to identify and you've got to explain and make very, very clear what the opportunity is. You're not in deal sourcing and trading to sell properties. You're in deal sourcing and trading to sell opportunities. So when you're looking at introducing it out to investors, you would make sure that your language is very opportunity based rather than being very property based. Don't talk about the curtains. Don't talk about who used to live there. Don't talk about anything that isn't relevant. Talk about the numbers, focus on the numbers, and focus on the opportunity, because that's exactly what the investor is going to be thinking about when they're looking at your advert. Now, we've got a couple of franchisees who focus on this strategy alone. So we're looking at this from a cash flow point of view, but these guys are actually building their entire business around only deal sourcing and trading. And these guys create over £50,000 worth of turnover every single month, just from finding the deals, packaging up the deals, and then putting them out to their list of investors. £50,000 a month, which is over £600,000 a year you can generate just from deal sourcing and trading. Now, one of the things that we help them with is organizing the investor list. So we have a list of over 100,000 investors where any one of our franchisees can find an opportunity. They can advertise that opportunity out to that list of investors. And then we'll generate the leads from that list of investors and pass them straight over to the franchisee so that they can have a conversation with them and then aim to sell their property to them. So the time to make money, obviously what you need to do is you need to find property in order to start making money. So if you were able to find property, you could do that within a couple of weeks. You could then advertise that property out on numerous different places. You know, we've got an investor list of over 100,000, but there are other places you can go. You can go to Facebook, you can go to the groups on Facebook, you can go into LinkedIn, you can generate your own leads by any one of those sources and in order to make that sourcing fee money. Now, the quickest you're going to do that is going to be about 1 month. So in terms of cash flow, you're looking at about a month's turnaround. Now, looking at lease options as well, there's a number of different ways that you can make money from lease options. And, you know, I run a separate course solely and specifically on lease options because the amount of opportunity available in lease options is absolutely colossal. So what you can actually use lease options for some of the previous ways that we've talked about. So trading deals, you can use a lease option in order to help you trade a deal. You can also use a lease option to secure a quick sale property so that you can sell that on to an investor. You can use a lease option in a rent-to-rent deal, or you could use a lease option for a standard buy-to-let deal. For some of the more old school people that have been in property for a little while, if you know what a back-to-back is, you can use a lease option in order to do a back-to-back where basically you secure a property for a certain price, let's say £100,000, but then you sell it on for a higher price. Let's say £150,000, and you basically sit in the middle of that transaction without actually buying the property, but you make that margin in the middle. So you can use a lease option for that. And you can also use a lease option for buying a property, but not using any of your own money. So what you can do with the lease option is you can sign a property up to a lease option. Let's say that you turn it into a HMO. So you run it as a HMO for a number of years. And all the time, the profit that you're generating from that HMO, you put into a bank account that you do not touch. And then after a period of 3 or 4 years, that amount of money in that bank account has grown significantly to the point where you can buy that property and use that as your deposit without using any additional of your own money because you've generated that money by running that property. So there are a lot of options with lease options. There are a lot of different ways that you can use a lease option. Phenomenally powerful contract and available to everybody. Realistically, the amount of time that it's going to take you to make money from a lease option is going to be around 1 month. So looking at these different strategies, you've got rent to rent or serviced accommodation. We've been a bit conservative with these as well, to be perfectly honest. We've said that you could make £700 per month from rent to rent serviced accommodation. And if you remember from rent to rent, that the normal sort of turnaround would be about 1 month. From lease options, you can make around £3,000 to £8,000. And that's usually taking the income from trading a deal, but using a lease option contract to do that. From property sourcing, a 2% average fee. Again, you're looking at fees from around £3,000 to £8,000. From selling off plan, you're going to make an 8% fee. And from introducing somebody's source capital, if you were lucky enough to be a source franchisee, then that would be a 5% fee that you would generate. Now, looking at how that can grow for you over the period of a year, you've got all the different strategies down here on the left-hand side. In this column here, I am assuming that you are going to put £12,000 into this yourself because you've got two different rent to rents going on here. So I'm assuming £6,000 each. So you're going to put £12,000 in, but you can turn that £12,000 that you've initially invested into £96,400 within the period of 1 year. And if you look here, I've gone January, February, March, April, May. I've gone through the months, and I've put down that you're not going to make any income whatsoever in month 1. So again, I'm being conservative. You're not making any income at all from month 1. From month 2, you've started to make an income from your first rent to rent. And then you run that first rent to rent for a period of about 6 months. And then after 6 months, you then start your second rent to rent. From the lease option, I've put that you're going to make £300 a month from that lease option. So somewhat similar to the rent to rent contract, but obviously your long-term plan is that you're going to start to put that £300 into a bank account, and you're going to use that to buy the property in a couple of years' time. So you're not generating a huge amount of profit per month from the lease option, but it's all part of the longer game that you're playing. From sourcing and packaging deals, I've said that you're going to sell one source deal every month for the first, well, not including the first month, but from month 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, you sell one deal a month. That's it, one deal a month. And then after that, you sell 2 deals a month. Now, like I said, we've got people that are currently generating over £50,000 from that strategy alone. So again, in terms of being conservative, in terms of being realistic, if you have the right focus, I see absolutely no problem why you couldn't achieve that from month 2 onwards. And then looking at the off-plan sourcing, I've put that you're only going to sell 2 of these deals in a 12-month period. And finally, looking at capital, I've said that you're going to introduce 2 people over the course of a year, and each one of those people has invested £50,000 into capital. So again, very conservative, very straightforward. And all of those combined add up to an income of £96,400 if you are focused and if you deliver on purely looking at the short-term cash flow strategies. Now, we talk about it now and it's quite flippant, right? It's quite flippant and it's quite easy and it trips off the tongue. All you've got to do is focus on the cash flow strategies. But when you get into property, that is a very difficult thing to do, because what a lot of people do when they get into property is they look at these cash flow strategies, they realize that it's hard work, and then they move on up to the bigger deals, to the land deals and to the new build deals. But when they make that transition, what they're being tempted away by the shiny penny syndrome. And what they're not thinking about is cash flow, because they're not realizing at that point that they need to focus on cash flow in order to earn the right to move on to those bigger deals. Because it's those bigger deals that are going to pay you the big money, but you need to sort your cash flow out first. So what do you do when you've established your cash flow? So the first thing that you do is let's say you're generating £96,400 from your first year. You wouldn't want to spend £96,400. You'd want to spend a significant amount less than that, so that you can then build your pot. And when you build your pot, you can then go into the bigger strategies that require more money from you, so that you can have access to those bigger profits. And those bigger profits would include flips and conversions, title splits. You'd basically be building your portfolio by acquiring property in creative ways. And each one of those deals is not only going to add property to your portfolio, but also contribute towards your overall wealth. And you'd be looking at, creating 40, 50, 60,000 pounds worth of income from those deals as you do them. So that's how you do it. That's how you start. And then you go on to building your portfolio afterwards. And being disciplined around that is the right way to do it. So we have a training schedule that has over 90 training days per year. It's comprehensive and it's broken out into different strategies, so that if you're a franchisee, you can see, for instance, I need to focus on cash flow. And so I'm going to come on the cash flow courses. And once you've done those cash flow courses and you've built your cash flow, you can then move on up to, say, flips and refurbs or commercial conversions, or you can do it at the right time for you. You can take it's completely under your control. We don't force you to take any courses apart from the induction at the very beginning. And all of the courses are included with your franchise, and they would be available to you as many times as you want to take them. And you guys can download our training schedule right here if you want to copy that down, or you'll get access to these slides at the end of the webinar. So at Sourced, we have three different levels of franchise. So if you want to be in property full-time, if that's going to be your main focus, you might not have a huge amount of money behind you, but you know that you are committed, you are serious, and you are absolutely gunning to make a success out of being in the property industry, then the network is for you. That is the standard franchise. And as that franchise, you get access to everything that we have at Sourced. Now, as a partner, we would help you build a portfolio. So the partner franchise is much more focused at people who they might have some money in the bank because they have a decent job, but they don't have time. They have a decent job because that job takes a lot of their time. And what we will do for those people that want to grow a successful portfolio is we will help them find the properties, we will assess the properties, we'll provide a huge amount of training for how to run HMOs, how to find HMOs, how to build HMOs, and then we'll help them through that process. And then the developer franchise is all about helping local, smaller developers who are building, 20 or between 20 and 50 units per year. That's what we're looking for the developer. Now, from the network, just as the Source network, we've got over 100 offices nationwide. We generate leads for the franchisees in our network. We have targeted regional support to help these franchisees, and we host lots of social events in order to get these guys together, because being in property can be a little bit lonely. So we take every single opportunity to get people together. We've just arranged another meeting on the 22nd of September for 20 franchisees in the Northwest, which anybody from the entire country can come to, but we've arranged another event to get these guys together, because being part of a team is part of the benefit of being with Source. So this is a quote from Pete Donahue, who's had a property funded from us. So we helped him find this property. He actually found a property in training, and then he went through a process of being funded, which we took care of for him at HQ. The leads that we generate for our franchisees, they come from a lot of different places, and they've got a lot of different purposes to the leads. So we'll generate commercial leads, planning leads, below market value, portfolio, refurbishment, apartments, HMO, rent to rent, lots of different types of leads that we send to franchisees every single month for them to make the most out of. Just having a little glitch and waiting for the internet to catch up. There we go. So that's the slide that I've just shown you. And the next one is about the investor database that we have. We have over 100,000 people registered on our investor database, and we sell a huge amount of property over that investor database. Not only do we have a lot of people on there, but they're very, very engaged. So we send them we send them property opportunities every single day, generating a huge amount of leads for our franchisees, and that then converts a huge amount of property for them to make money out of. So these are the different training courses that we have. We've got the induction day, like I talked about. Then we move on to funding and investors, lease options and HMO. We've got support days. We've got rent to rent and serviced accommodation, commercial conversions and planning, flips and refurbs, new build developments. And we're looking at introducing even more training courses in the coming months. So we're looking at introducing an accountancy training course. We're looking at introducing a mindset training course. There's lots of different ways that we can take this, and lots of different opportunities that we can show our franchisees. So the support days, there's some support days in the north and support days in the south. The support days are based on a mastermind structure where we sit down with a group of no more than 5 franchisees, and each one takes their turn of about an hour, sitting at the front, talking about their business, talking about a business plan, talking about whatever they want to talk about, so that all the other people in the room can help them make progress, help them create a plan, or help them with a problem that they're currently having. And then all of these training days are repeated every 4 months for our franchisees. So you could come on to funding and investors 3 times in a 12-month period. Every time that you come on that course is absolutely free for you, because you are a Source franchisee. So the success so far, we've just taken you through the kind of stuff that you should be creating in a cash flow point of view. So I've shown you the rent to rent, shown you the lease option with assisted sale, which is one of the creative ways that you can structure a flip of a property. You're looking at a £30,000 minimum profit. From title splits, you're looking at £20,000 minimum profit. Sourcing, 2% fee, which we talked about earlier. A refurbishment, you're looking at a £25,000 minimum fee. And then you look at the bigger deals like the conversions and the new build from £60,000 to £150,000 upwards. And then you've got off-plan sales, which are an average fee might be between 4 and 6%. So from the franchise point of view, you'd be getting part of a national brand. You'd get exclusive territory of 40,000 households. You'd get all of the training that we've just talked about, Obviously, it's a proven business model because we have over 100 franchisees at the moment. You get exposure on property websites, attracting thousands of monthly investors and visits. And the price of the standard franchise is £12,500 plus VAT. You then get all of the property leads that we generate for you. You get email, phone, and video support. You get national brand marketing. You get bi-monthly support days and a very focused support person in your area who is going to give you one-to-one support. And then you get access to the funding as well, which is available to all of our franchisees. There's monthly training events that you can come onto. We can help you manage a property networking meeting, and we produce a huge amount of legal documents that you have access to. So it's a real benefit to have us in your corner if you're looking at buying a property or going into property. Now, looking at the leads alone, the leads that you can generate on the open market for an investor would cost about £15 per lead. Now, the average number of leads that we generate for our franchisees would mean that would cost our franchisees £450 a month. However, with us, it's included in your monthly fee. And then for your property leads that we generate for you, that would be around £50 per lead. And the number of property leads that we would generate for you would cost around £1,500 per month. And again, with us, that's included. So in general, if you were going to go about this on your own, it would cost you about £2,000 a month to produce only the leads that we're generating for you, never mind the bespoke CRM system, the access to funding and everything else. However, we only charge £200 a month for that privilege. Now with Partner, if you're far more interested in, not leaving your day job, in growing your own HMO portfolio, but having our help at growing your portfolio, what we'll do is we'll tailor the training courses specifically for HMO, so as not to take up too much of your time. So we have 3 HMOs in his local town, and we've helped him through the whole process, finding the right properties, introducing the tenants, and then managing those tenants. And that's one of our source partners. That's Jack. What do you get from us? Well, obviously you get the benefit of our experience and the proven strategies in order to make HMOs work. And we'll give you specific, just went past that one too quickly. We'll give you specific HMO property deals 24 hours before they come out to the database. So every HMO deal that one of our franchisees finds, we'll give them to you. We'll put them across your table for 24 hours before we then put them out to our list of 100,000 investors. For the HMO, we've got the induction training, then we've got planning and structure, funding and licensing, refurbishment, finding and managing tenants, conversions, and I think that one's probably lettings. Oh, development, there you go. And again, these trainings are repeated every single 4 months, and they're specifically for HMO. And the purpose of HMO is you would come into being a partner if you had some money in the bank that you were looking to invest in property, and we can help you invest in property and make very, very serious returns. So you're looking for overall, you'll be looking to generate between 10 and 15% per annum from your overall portfolio, a 30% plus return on your equity. Your income per year would be between £50,000 to £150,000, depending on how quickly you were trying to grow your portfolio, and your profit per property, you'd be looking at £15,000 to £20,000 per year per property. Now, to be one of our partners, that would cost £17,500 plus VAT. And the reason that it's a little bit more expensive than the network is that we have to put in a lot more effort. We put in a lot more effort and a lot more time into making sure that you get those HMO leads, you get that HMO support that you need. And again, it would be £200 per month for the license fee. Now, the minimum investment that you would need in order to become one of our partners would be £100,000 in the north, £200,000 in the Midlands, or £300,000 in London or the Southeast. Now, we are able to fund 100% of profitable property investments, and that's what we can achieve through sourced capital. Source work on the basis that we make money if you make money. So what we try and do is we try and keep our costs down as much as we possibly can, And at that point that you make a net return, you make a net profit, we would charge you 5% of that net profit. But we defer that till the very end until we know that you've made your net profit first, and then we make our 5% fee at that point there. Now, looking at some of our franchisees and some of the deals that these guys have done, this is Chris, one of our franchisee in Bournemouth. Now, he's got this commercial conversion, and he's actually changing that into service accommodation. So I was talking about service accommodation. This is the blend of the sort of long-term big deals and the shorter-term cash flowing deals and how they can work together. So he's taken an office conversion and he's turned it into 14 apartments, which are perfect for service accommodation in Bournemouth. And he's going to be making a GDV of the end property is going to be worth about 2.2 million, which will generate over £100,000 cash flow per year for Chris. And his profit's going to be circa £1 million. That building was only bought for, I think, £875,000. So it's a phenomenal deal. So he's converting that commercial building, but he's turning it into service accommodation because it produces far better cash flow. And he's going to be taking that £100,000 and he's going to be refinancing that and adding that to his portfolio. So commercial to residential conversion, we've got Mike, who is in Stoke, and he's taken a normal house, which was used as an office, and with planning permission, he's turning it into a 7-bed HMO. So again, looking at the cash flow strategies of turning that into a HMO. Found among commercial property listings, located close to a business park, popular with seasonal workers. He's going to refinance it on completion, and his net yield, and Mike is very good with his numbers, his net yield is going to be 8%, and that is after all costs are taken out. So it's a great deal for Mike. And then looking at Everton on a smaller scale, we've got one serviced accommodation project, and he's found this one deal. This is on a rent-to-rent basis, and he makes £800 per calendar month from this serviced accommodation flat down near London. So in terms of all the different strategies that you've got available to you in generating a cash flow, I hope that's helped you. I hope that's opened your eyes to not only the things that you already knew about, but the stuff that is available to you that you did not know about. And at that point, I'm going to jump up to the top and I'm going to look at the chat box and I'm going to start to answer any questions that you might have. Regarding the off-plan, is someone like myself allowed to purchase a buy off-plan deal with a developer and forward it to you before perhaps one becomes a franchisee? Well, I've just lost my place. Reason is there is a new flat development where I go frequently and I would like to quickly try this out. I don't really understand your question. Can you have a look at if you go to that developer and you say you want to sell their off-plan stuff for them, then you can sign a contract with that developer. It would be a case of how good a salesperson you are at convincing that developer to give you exclusivity over those properties for a set period of time. Now, can you send them to us? Absolutely, I'll have a look at it for you. Can you send it out to our marketing database? No, that's something that's specifically for franchisees. So you wouldn't be able to market it with us until you were a franchisee. But in terms of having a look at the deal, yeah, I'll have a look at the deal for you. What I would expect from you, though, I wouldn't want you to just send me a deal that was, for instance, a Rightmove link. I would want a description of what you think the deal is and a financial description of what you think the deal is, just so that we know whether the deal works or not from day one. Stephen, you mentioned about areas of 40,000 houses. What area do you have available, and are you limited to those particular areas if you see great deals elsewhere? That's a really good question. So yeah, the franchisees that we have their own exclusive territory of 40,000 households. Now, they can deal anywhere in the UK so long as there's not another franchisee there. But what we have is we have guidelines whereby if any of our franchisees sees a deal in another franchisee's area, they have to inform the other franchisee about it, and they have to have a discussion about it to see whether there is a way that potentially, Stephen, I find a deal in your area and I come to you and I say, I found this deal. Would you mind if I took that deal out of your area and I'll do something reciprocal for you? So if you find a deal in my area, you can take it from my area. So we would encourage our franchisees to have that discussion with a review period. So a review after 6 months where you know, if all of a sudden, Stephen, we look after 6 months and you've taken 4 deals from my area and I've taken nothing from yours, I might then say, you know what, you can keep taking deals from my area, that's fine. I'm going to start charging you a fee of £200, £300, £400, £500, whatever it is, for every deal that you take out of my area from now on. So we would encourage our franchise to work as a team for mutual gain. Because if I'm taking deals from your area, it's because I've got a contact that is strong in your area. Now, in the long term, you want to get hold of that contact, or you want to start working with that contact. Now, I might develop so much work in my area that I now don't have time to look in your area, and I can hand that contact over to you, and now you can start taking advantage of that contact and everything that they can bring to the table. So that's what we would do. So you have exclusivity over your 40,000 households. You can deal with other franchisees as you see fit. But you are not limited. And if there's no franchisee in a certain area, any franchisee can deal there. I hope that makes sense. So any other questions before I pop this to an end? And is there a payment plan available for the franchise fee? You can create a payment plan. I think actually, is it Dapo? Sam would be a better person to talk to about this. So I will pop your name over to Sam, and he will get in touch with you, because Sam has a person that creates payment plans who might be able to help you. Now, what you would need to do is you would need to pay the full £12,500 before you join us. So there isn't a payment plan once you've already joined us. You would need to pay that in full before you become a franchisee. Another one from Stephen. You have over 100 franchisees. What percentage of franchisees are successful, and why do franchisees fail? What period is the franchise license for? Okay, so 2 questions there. Let me deal with the first one first. What percentage of franchisees fail? You know, in any business, you're going to get a certain number of failures. And I think from our point of view, we don't take on everybody. Everybody that wanted to be if we took on everybody that wanted to be a franchise, we'd probably have over 200 franchisees now. But we'd have a lot of people who weren't being successful. So we are quite picky about who we bring on board, because we only choose the people that we want to work with. The number of the franchisees that fail, I would say, are the ones that they come on board, they come through the interview process, they get selected, and when it comes to actually delivering on what they say, they're not able to do so for one reason or another. You know, they might think that they're very good at negotiating. They might think that they're very good at, you know, different things, different aspects. They might think that they're very motivated. But when it comes to the day after the training course, when we pick up the phone and we say to them, you know, it's 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, what have you done today? And they say, I've done nothing today. You know, that's the alarm bells are going. And we'll try and work with them. We'll encourage them to come onto our support days. We'll encourage them to come onto more training. And now moving forward, this will inform the local support person to pay them particular attention. But I'd say that's the biggest issue that we have, that people are unrealistic with their own expectations through the interview process, because we choose them based on the stuff they're telling us, but when it comes to actually applying it, it doesn't happen. And that's the biggest problem with anything that you look at. Going through school, my kids at school, going through any other property training course, it's not about the information that you're taught. It's about the retention of the information and the application of the information. If you can remember and you can apply, you will be successful. There is absolutely no doubt about it in my mind whatsoever. Some of the people that we have who are the most successful franchisees are not necessarily the most intelligent franchisees, but they take what they know and they apply it rigidly. I remember the rent-to-rent stuff that I did. I see people going on rent-to-rent courses all the time. I see people going on course after course after course because they always feel like they should know more before they start to apply it. When I did my rent-to-rent stuff, I read 1 book and I applied it to the point where I was making over £6,000 worth of income every single month just from my rent-to-rent portfolio. Never mind my other portfolio, never mind my other flips and refurbs that were going on, but just for rent-to-rent. And it's all about having an understanding that you know enough, now apply. And that's what we try and focus on. And that's why the franchise works so well, because we're there encouraging people to apply the information. Please, can I have this recorded video emailed to me? Yeah, I believe it's going to go out to everyone, Dapo. So yeah, that's not a problem at all. Do you help with creating realistic business plans to help grow my business? Stephen, yeah, absolutely. So I'm the franchise director. And then I have a network of franchise support people throughout the country. Now, if you joined us right now, one of those franchise support people would be assigned to you. And after you'd come on the training, which I would hold, one of those franchise support people would sit down with you and create a business plan with you to help you apply the information that we've taught you. So yeah, absolutely. Part of that business plan would obviously be to come onto other training courses to learn different strategies so that you knew what was available to you. But yes, absolutely. One of those franchise support guys, Abby in the south, or maybe Lewis in the Midlands, would sit down with you and they would help you with that process. So at that point, the chat has finished. The chat box questions have all been answered. Is there anything else that I can help out with right now? I'll just sit here for another 10 or 20 seconds or so. No problem, Stephen. You are more than welcome. Zia, I can see that you are asked, well, you said that you have a question. Can you write your question in the chat box? I'll stay here for another, yeah, if you can write your question in the chat box here, I can see that you've raised your hand. There is a chat box, so please write your question in there and I'll happily answer it for you. Just stay here. Dapo, thanks for your time. Yeah, no problem at all. My pleasure. If you've got any other questions, then by all means get in touch. You guys can see the email address on the screen at the moment, franchise@source.co. So jump over to there. Okay, Zia, I'm going to jump off now. If you have got a question though, you've got franchise@source.co. So by all means, jump over to franchise@source.co and ask that question and we'll be happy to get back to you. So thanks guys, really appreciate your time this afternoon. If you have got any questions, you've got it there and I will jump off.